Jeff, man, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
It's been a while. I think I was thinking back to when we first met, and I remember having a conversation with you. I was walking around Austin, and we were talking about Facebook ads, which was the initial reason we got connected, was doing a little bit of like Facebook ads consulting, and then we've been working together for the last, over 2 years. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you. So I'm excited. I feel like this is a long overdue podcast.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, let's dive in, man. I would love to hear for our listeners. Well, I think one of the things that's interesting about working with you is that you have a different mindset than a lot of other clients I've worked with. You've got a business that's more of like a demand capture business, and you're an expert at merchandising and like putting together packages and then selling them on your website. How did you learn how to create packages and in your business, and what has that meant to your business?
I think part of it was, I own classiccarstereos.com. So we sell audio components, radio speakers, all that stuff. And part of it came, like my dad owns a business in e-commerce that's auto parts, and they did really well with kits. So once we kind of got the business going off the ground selling radios, it was like this, you kind of have a one-time shot given like the product and where it is in the customer's life cycle. Like the radio is the last thing you put in the car typically when you're restoring a classic car. So in terms of like, how do I get more, out of each customer? And the thing was like, well, ideally a customer would buy a radio, front speakers, rear speakers, an amp, and a subwoofer. But our target demographic is primarily like old guys, and old guys really don't want that stuff because they just want something simple. But I kind of just was a trial and error thing that said, if I can put together a package that's under $1,000, can I get someone to basically buy everything I want them to buy for their vehicle, like at one time? Because shipping's not necessarily cheap, and given kind of demand creation thing, like you're paying to acquire that customer every single time. So if we could just boost that AOV, it seemed like it would win. And it's also kind of a differentiator because these guys are typically, well off. They have the money. $1,000 isn't that much in terms of their budget. So it's kind of just just give me everything. Like
an ease thing, make it happen and get it all together.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting because you have, you have a pretty large business now with a lot of like legitimate moving parts. And it's interesting to see how your business has grown and changed. Could you kind of describe a little bit about like, how do you run, like how large is the business as far as like employees? How do you have, when you navigate some of this stuff and you're, putting together audio, classic car, stereos, all these different parts, how do you even manage all that?
Unfortunately, like the answer is probably most of it's in my head, at least right now. And I'm trying to get through that. So in terms of employees, like it's kind of a shared resources structure, because I work not for my dad, but with my dad, and he's got resources, I have resources, and we kind of just pull them all together. So we have 4, sales / customer service, and then 1 full-time shipping guy, and then there's a sales manager that is a sales resource that we share among a lot of companies here. I guess in terms of how I manage it is just, it's kind of been difficult, to be honest, because a lot of it was just me spewing stuff and them contacting me on Slack and saying, well, what about this? And it got to the point where it's like, I can't manage this anymore. So I decided I'm going to write some internal documents, and then just started also focusing on content for the customer, where if I can educate the customer what's in my brain, maybe they won't ask the salespeople questions, so then they won't ask me questions. And then at the same time, our salespeople read those documents too. Now they're no longer asking me. So it's kind of just been an attempt to like educate everyone along the system.
Yeah.
But it's still, I would say it's still a messy work in process.
Well, I'd love to talk about like the growth that's happened in the last couple of years, right? Because it's been very interesting watching you guys continue to grow. So when we were talking a couple of years ago, when you were kind of dabbing into Facebook ads, and really that was like a testing sort of phase for you. Where were you 2 years ago, and how has the business changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, good question. I think when we first started talking, I had kind of started listening to a lot of the e-commerce podcasts, and a lot of the podcast content out there was regarding Facebook ads, because you had a lot of these, DTC brands, and that's where they get their customers. In my brain, it was kind of a little bit of a shiny object syndrome. I was like, well, if this is working for everyone else, like it has to be working for us. We're leaving money on the table. So I think I contacted you. I think Katie and our team went to one of your profit summits.
Yep.
And, you and I started working together doing those Facebook ads, and we kind of came to this thing where it's like, well, you can't really target the people we need to target like in Facebook. It works for retargeting and like the dynamic product ads work. But other than that, like there's not that much that you can do, because in Facebook, I can't target people that own classic cars, because there's a lot of people that are interested in classic cars, but if you don't own it, there's nothing I can really sell you. So that's kind of where I was, a lot more, I would say, hands-on marketing, doing stuff. I felt like I was kind of leading the charge, and then kind of like, working with you. And then also just as the business grew, I just didn't really have time to do that. So I kind of focused on, making sure Katie was consuming a lot of the content I was consuming. And also like, just as we grew and we talked, kind of the employees just, they got better. And then as they got better, I could move on to bigger and better things. And then COVID happened, and we were presented with like a whole new level of challenges with the supply chain. So it's kind of been weird, because we first started talking about like hands-on marketing tactics.
Yeah.
And I would say like today I do very little like hands-on marketing, and it's more, how do I manage a team, run a business, and plan for the future so that, for lack of a better description, I can spend more time on the golf course.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about that, how to build the business so it's actually stronger the more Jeff plays golf. It's a direct correlation. The more Jeff plays golf, the more it grows. So let's talk about COVID, because it's very interesting, right? You're not the only one that faced challenges and opportunities with COVID. What was going through your mind last year in March when this thing was bearing down on everybody, and what challenges and opportunities did you face?
I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was like, don't order anything. Like, don't order anything. Just as much inventory as we have, like get as much cash as possible, like on the books, because cash is king, right? I work with my dad here, so I had like a experienced resource there. So we talked with him, and it was like, okay, we had like whole plans. Like if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do that. We had, one of my largest suppliers just shut down for like 4 to 5 weeks. And I don't remember like what exactly got them to like go back to work, but a lot of it was just, I think the owner was a little bit scared. The employees were scared. We stayed open, but all of a sudden it's like, from a supply standpoint, like the faucet was turned off. Then all of a sudden it was like, boom, like, let's go, baby. Like
from a demand perspective, the faucet was turned on.
Yeah. And so it was kind of this weird thing where like the demand was going crazy, yet my supply was kind of cut off. It was like good and bad because we had enough inventory, luckily, like on hand to weather the storm. And then, it was just kind of like these old guys, for lack of a better description, had nothing to do. They couldn't travel. They couldn't go out to eat, but they had a car in their driveway. So it was something to do.
It's like all the times when you've got, all the someday projects. Someday I'll replace this when I've got the time, and then boom, time gets there, and you're in a position where your suppliers are shutting down. What's been your biggest takeaway from that last year? And I mean, you guys obviously experienced a lot of growth and challenges with supply. Have you changed? How do you think about inventory management, about like demand planning, and how has that changed over the last year?
I mean, it's hard to say. So, I mean, what we really did is like, okay, I'm going to kind of isolate myself by putting a lot more inventory in stock. And originally it was scary because you're facing this like unknown where you want to keep cash on the books, but the easiest place to kind of grow and ensure that you don't kind of create your own problem was to buy inventory. So there's some seasonality to our business, and I've kind of also figured out that there's just been a lack of, product that's been available. So, there's all this stuff going on. The stock market's kind of been, it was on fire for a while, but in the past, like month or two, it's been kind of rocky, and it's like, okay, so what can I do? And the answer is like, I can invest in myself, and given our business, the best place to invest for me right now is inventory. In terms of like how I determine what to buy, like a lot of it is just looking at past sales, looking at lead times, and then also just kind of looking at society and culture, knowing like, okay, what's happening. I think you and I looked at some of the trends for one of the sites, the marine site, and it was like, okay, from March to August, people are out on their boats and people are looking for stereos for their boats. So in talking with you, I bought big in September to make sure that I had inventory in February.
Yeah. I think when we looked at it too, it's like from March to August, and then August 1st, it just drops off a cliff. Like you're talking about seasonality. It's very, very interesting because I think when people are young, when people are early on in a market or early on with a business, they may not factor that in. And as you get more involved with the market, you start to realize, oh, wow, like seasonality plays a huge part, and inventory planning around that seasonality can really like make or break whether or not you have success over a year.
Yeah, and that's what happened. When COVID happened, I decided to kind of branch out into the boat audio side of things. And I placed my order, I think like my big stocking order, May 1st. And I got it in August. Yeah. And it was like the whole time, we'll carry back orders. So it was like people just kept buying stuff, but we couldn't fulfill it. And he was like, okay, what happened here? When we looked at the trends, it was like, I literally and figuratively like missed the boat. I did not have the inventory in stock in time to take advantage of the market. Come September, I was like, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Yeah. And boom, here we are back in spring, and it's starting to roll.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's mid-March here. It's like March 23rd, and it is 80 degrees. It's boat weather here. In Austin, at least, not the rest of the U.S. quite yet. So one of the things that I've always found interesting about talking to you is I feel like you have a higher level comprehension around finance than a lot of other entrepreneurs that I work with. Could you talk me through like how do you think about entrepreneurial finance? What are the things that are important to know, and why is it kind of on the top of your list? As an entrepreneur who runs an e-commerce business, is things that are important?
I think the number one reason why it's become important to me was just we had a dropship business that was basically losing money. It wasn't, and when you go through that, you get to learn from your mistakes and see what happens. So when that starts happening, it's like, okay, where did we go wrong? What were we doing here? And what were like the controls that we did not have in place that kind of hid the truth from us? What happened was we had, explosive growth with a business that had, relatively low margins, relatively, low barriers to entry. And it was kind of sexy. Like a lot of people were getting into it. And revenue just kept going up and up every month, but we weren't tracking profit because it didn't matter to us. Cash flow was growing and we had plenty of money to pay last month's bills, if you will. And then it got to this point where it just kind of like plateaued and we were kind of caught with our pants down. You're like, oh, how are we going to do this? That's kind of scary. Luckily, I was a 50-50 partner in that business with my dad. So we could kind of pool our resources together and say, okay, we can pay off this debt and it's going to be okay. And the business is still going today and it's profitable today. It's just significantly scaled back. In terms of what I look at, revenue is important, right? Because cash pays the bills. And if you don't have cash, you don't really have much. But at the same time, cash without profits doesn't really mean anything because you're just delaying the inevitable, which is what happened to us. We were cash flow positive, not making profit, and all of a sudden 30 days later, the bills came due. So profits matter, and you're kind of the amount of work you put into growing the business, it's really not worth it. And you're going to be really disappointed if you're not making money because it's fun. Like there's nothing better. And then this realization of like, oh shit, like what am I going to do here? What are my options? Because you're either going to have to, like, if you have employees, cut back employees, or you're going to have to like shut the whole thing down. You got to figure something out. And there's no good or fun answer to figure it out. The answer is usually not, well, I'll just sell more, because if you're not profitable, selling more just means you're going to lose more.
And raising money is just delaying the inevitable as well.
Yeah. And, it was a dropship business. So it's not like this is a brand that you can go out and get investors. Like this was there's 100 other people doing the same thing. We just kind of saw this area where we're good with Google ads. So we can do well with Google ads and we can make money doing this. That wasn't necessarily the truth. Yeah. So throughout that process, we've kind of figured things out, and it's like, what do we track? We're tracking revenue. And you want to see that grow. Then the other thing, we're tracking, our cost of goods sold. I think it's a little bit different for us than a typical D2C brand, because that D2C brand is, you're buying in bulk from, Asia typically, and your big expense is marketing. Well, with us, the biggest expense is the cost of the product, right? So we're constantly tracking, cost of goods sold. I track advertising spend as, a function of sales. I'm not really these days looking at advertising spend, across different channels or different campaigns. That's what Katie does, and that's what her job is to do. I kind of look at it and say, okay, how much revenue are we doing? How much are we spending on advertising, and what's happening? It's not on my radar anymore.
And if it changes, so it's looking poorly, then you can go back and look it down by channel and start to figure out, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think part of it is since I've kind of leveled up, if you will, I haven't had it show up as an issue yet, so we haven't got there. So yeah, it's kind of all right, what's happening with revenue, what's happening with cost of goods sold, and then also what's happening with freight as a percentage of sales, because those are our big levers that are going to impact profitability. So we have some reports that we can look at. So it's okay, I can say, on however frequently I want to. I can look at it daily if I want. That says how many products did shipped out the door yesterday or whatever that time frame is that were less than, X% margin. So I can set that at like whatever I need it to be, depending on your product. It could be 50, it could be 20, it could be 15. All depends on your business. But if you have the ability to track that, you now know, okay, I got a price increase here or something happened here. Like what happened that this went away? And it's kind of like those little steps will tell the whole story. But if you're not tracking it on that level, that's how you kind of get those surprises like what we got with, the UTV business.
Sure. And that drop shipping story is like, it's one that many people have, especially in drop shipping, because when you look at some of these like ridiculous YouTube videos talking about making tons of money drop shipping, well, yeah, it's possible. But then at the end of the day, when the bill comes due and you're stuck there and you're like, well, I just made cash, no profit. Yeah, that can be challenging.
And it wasn't like drop shipping, like, the Facebook, guru that's trying to tell you like, go buy stuff on Alibaba.
Skincare stuff.
We're selling
masks.
We still are selling products that from brands that are using, wholesale channels based in the United States. So it's, high dollar drop shipping. We were inventorying product and we have with some product. Now that business is 100% drop ship today and profitable today, but
you learned how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about Google AdWords, because you guys are really, really, really good at Google AdWords. What do people need? So there's two types of businesses, right? And you've talked about this as like DTC brands versus what you guys are doing, which is kind of more, demand capture. What do people need to know about, like, why are you guys so good at Google AdWords? What have you figured out? And what's some advice for other people who need to make Google AdWords work, for their business to work?
You're asking me a question that, for the most part, like I'm so far removed from it that like I can't answer that. I can't answer that well.
Less in tactics. What I mean is less in tactics, maybe more in like mindset. Because at a certain point, you had to figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an SEO play, to be honest with you. I remember we were on vacation. I was with my family, and we were in St. Kitts at the casino. I think I don't know. I don't remember how old I was. And this guy was just an absolute riot sitting at the blackjack table. And we kind of saw him out in the lobby and he was partying and having a good time. And we were just asking him, so what do you do? And he's like, oh, I have a digital marketing agency. Oh, really? We kind of do that. But, we turned off Google Ads because our SEO was so good. And his response was like, that's like when your kid can get A's, but he's coming home with C's and you're okay with it. That was his response.
Yeah.
He's like, your kid can get A's, but you're getting C's and you're okay with it. And he said, because if you're not bidding on like your brand, someone else is. So why you're just giving up that real estate to someone else. Now, branded, I know there's a lot of like stuff out there as to whether like, oh, what should you do on like branded search terms? But regardless of what you're doing, like if you're not bidding on your own brand, like you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
Now I say that, and like right now there's people that don't do it, and we thank them that they don't.
And also, what if you don't have enough money to bid on your own branded keywords, you're probably not in a good business.
Yeah.
Like if you're like questioning like, oh, I can't spend this money on my own branded keywords. It's a lot of money for me. Well, your margins probably aren't that great, or the business you're in probably isn't that great, because Jeff's going to come along and boom, somebody else is going to come and bid on your keywords that has a better business.
Yeah, I mean, and I listened to the episode on the way in this morning with Moise, and he kind of said the same thing about native. He's like, if we weren't there, somebody else was going to be. So they're there. And the other thing is like, if you track like ROAS and you run Facebook ads, like you're going to if you run branded keyword ads in AdWords. Like you're going to hit some ROAS target that's going to blow you away. Like just because the search intent when someone's going to Google and typing in your brand is going to be so high that that person's going likely to convert.
Sure. Now, it also, like, to your point about leveling up, right? And what you're talking about, where you are now versus a couple of years ago, and like moving from being like performance marketing heavy to more of like a leader in the business, thinking more strategic and making those changes. I've heard this from many of my clients. It's like, as you grow up the chain, well, you have to start thinking a little bit more of like big picture marketing versus, all right, I'm going to save some money here by not bidding on branded keywords. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're buying stuff for a certain price, you're selling it for another price, and you're trying to get the best return on your marketing. And it's relatively simple.
Yeah. Just do branded Google ads. Like, just do it.
So you talked about your leveling up a little bit over the last couple years. What does that look like to Jeff?
That's hard to say. I think it's I feel like there's times where it's like I have like very stressful days, and then I have days where there's just like no stress at all. I mean, the biggest thing I think that helped that though was COVID, because I worked from home for 7 straight weeks. And, we had to send our team remote. We did have some people that either couldn't work remote or they just said, I want to still go into the office. So we were able to like accommodate them and have them in, safe spaces. But it kind of came to this realization that I had to forced me to make sure that other people could handle virtually like every single job that I do. And it kind of allowed me to put some barriers in place. It's like, no, don't come to me to ask me that question. Like there's other people on our team that you can go to and they can answer that. I focused a lot on content during that time. And part of that content was A, both on the website, and then B, just internal documentation. And we hired some new people. And as those people have been here longer, like they get smarter and they know more just because they've been here longer. But it's also kind of given me like this, I've thought about like, okay, what do I really want out of the business in my life? And how do I want to run things? Because I have a perfect example that, I worked with every day, and my dad, who's run his business his way. And it's been nice because I can see like how he's done things right. I can also look at it and say, okay, I don't want to do things that way. I try to play golf, once or twice a week. If you go back like even 5 years, that wasn't on my radar. That wasn't on his radar. That wasn't on anyone's radar. On Fridays, usually we play together and everything runs smoothly. Like there's no issues. Usually things seem to like, they run better because people are forced to make decisions on their own. And if you make a decision and you can logically say, this is why I did it, even if you're wrong, I don't care. Because you thought about it and you made a decision and you're going to learn from it. I'm going to learn from it. Everyone's going to learn from it. So I don't necessarily always like the people aspect of it. Like it's nice when it's just you and I worry about myself. I do me, everyone else does them. You got to worry about, okay, how do I manage these people and make sure they're getting taken care of? But the freedom and I guess the peace of mind that comes from the fact that like, I don't need to be there and things will run themselves is incredible. I mean, you and I feel like when we first started talking, like we focused on tactics and now we focus on like, okay, what can we do to like make, our lives and our businesses better?
Yeah. And asking the right questions. It's interesting because tactics are usually like first order thinking. And then, okay, if I do this, this is going to happen. But sometimes adding an additional tactic can lead to second order consequences that you don't even consider how they might impact your life. I mean, one of those great examples is just, you mentioned COVID, like when you guys went from having everybody in-house on phone calls or like having phones at the office to being remote. What did that allow for you? The ability to work from home a couple days a week, which in the past really wasn't that much of an option.
No. And because of the phone situation, like I was at the very back of the phone trees. Like I really wasn't. So it was actually quite nice because I think we used like an in-house like PBX system before switching to Ring Central. So it was like for the first 3 or 4 weeks, like I just didn't have a phone. So you couldn't call me, and it was perfect.
That's the takeaway from the episode. Just get rid of your phone for 3 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah.
I saw a great tweet. It was, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. If you want to go neither fast nor far, go with kids. But I love the mindset shift of, hey, like everyone's going to learn from their mistake. Like a mistake happens and everybody learns from it, right? And that I feel the exact same way in my own business. It's like when mistakes are made, that is when it's an opportunity, because then you realize, oh, we had been doing this in a way that was just back asswards for like 2 years, and we hadn't thought about it because we hadn't seen any mistakes. And now the mistakes are here, and now we realize, okay, we can make this and improve this. What are some of the best resources that you have found on your journey here over the last couple of years?
It's hard to say. I mean, in terms of resources, I mean, I do, shameless plug, I do like the coalition.
Yeah.
I'm in there.
Not a shameless plug. If you're not in the coalition, you should join.
I mean, it's helpful for me in the sense that like, there's just stuff like a buy or die sequence. Like we had a welcome series email, and then in the coalition, like there's a template on like, here's how to successfully run like a buy or die. And we did it and it works. So I felt like even though in my mind, like I thought I knew what I was doing, and I still would say like, I do know what I'm doing. I don't know everything, and you don't know what you don't know. So, I mean, I found it like extremely helpful. I think I don't want to sound like, I guess cocky or arrogant, but like, yeah, I feel like when it comes to a lot of things, like I feel pretty advanced, but at the same time, like there's still nuggets in there. There's still useful trainings from people that have done things that I've never come across or that I will come across in the future. And it's just good to get some of those insights and talk with you, and you share some of the stuff you've learned with working from other people. I like Twitter. I follow a bunch of e-commerce people on there. There's a lot of noise out there. I mostly just kind of
What, D2C Twitter? Some noise on D2C Twitter?
Yeah, no way, right? I mean, I mostly just lurk, and I see people when they're like, where are all the like actual operators that are like doing this stuff for these companies like on a day-to-day basis? I'm like, well, they're just doing it, and probably lurking on Twitter is what they're doing. They're just not posting about what they're doing. They're just doing it.
Because it's hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
and you're not like, I don't know, sometimes you don't always want to share like whatever your secret sauce is.
Yeah. Man, I would agree with you that I would put you in an advanced category. I think it's been one of the things that's been interesting about working with you is like how quickly, like for you, it's not a matter of like whether or not you could do it. It's whether or not you got the patience to help other people do it.
Yeah. My dad jokes with me. He's like, when they were like handing out patience when you're like being born, like you didn't even have the patience to wait in line to receive some patience. So I get quickly irritated and.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. I think that's kind of a common thing, right? Like, I have a friend we always talk about. Like, if you have the 4-hour work week is really interesting because for people who have success and can actually build a business they can work on in 4 hours, then that like pays for their entire lifestyle. If they're that competent, they'll never be fulfilled with a 4-hour business that is just they only work on for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Because they have the ability to create so much more and have such a bigger impact. But Jeff, is there anything you could share that's you've been excited about, that you've been working on? Any wins, any like tips, tools, or things that you can think of that would be good to share with the audience? Somebody that you obviously you've listened to the podcast. For somebody else listening, what would you like to share with them that would be helpful?
I don't know if we maybe need to edit this part out. I don't know, man. Like, you asked me like a hard fucking question.
Okay. What about a tool? Do you have any tools that you've been liking and using recently? How about that?
The tools I use mostly right now is like Ahrefs, just kind of I've been focused kind of on, content, SEO, how to, answer people's questions for some of the like longer tail things. And it's, I think content's kind of crazy because if you're writing about a niche, a lot of times, and you're kind of in our demand capture business, like a lot of times, like it's going to be a collection page that's going to actually rank for what you want, that keyword. But sometimes it's like that constant pressure over time thing where it's like, if you keep, creating good content and helping people come to the decision, like they're more familiar with your brand. So the next time they click on your ad or your Google shopping ad, or they end up on your site through, a Google organic search, like they're going to see it and know, oh yeah, there's the familiarity. So yeah, I use Ahrefs.
I'll plug one that you're always plugging to me, which is NetSuite.
Yeah. I really like NetSuite. It's kind of like one of those advantages from like the ecosystem. I don't know that my businesses on their own could justify it, but I'll gladly take it because the financial reporting in there is incredible. And I think though, you don't necessarily need NetSuite to track finances. Like you can look at some of the sheets that you've created. And if you fill out those monthly or weekly, whatever have you, like you can get kind of the benefit of a NetSuite. It's probably going to take you a little bit longer to get the information. But if you don't have good accounting software, good accounting, tracking systems in place, like create them, because they will tell you of your problems well before you actually realize it.
For sure, man. I love it. Jeff, I appreciate you hopping on here and chatting with me. It's always fun to talk. And man, we got a golf game. We got to put a golf game in the books now that COVID is gone and I can get back to California. We're like a month away from California opening. I feel like maybe 2 months, but yeah, man, I'm excited to make that happen here over the summer.
The golf courses are open. If you can, so are the hotels. If you fly to California, we can play golf.
We'll make it happen. Awesome. For anybody who's listening, what would be the best? Do you want to direct them to your Twitter lurking profile, your email? Where would you direct them if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can do Twitter. It's Jeff_Vogl. Last name is Vogl. Or you can email me, jeffv@classiccarstereos.com.
Awesome. Jeff, thanks so much, man. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks, man.